Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Milo, and you're listening to the Physician Empowerment Podcast. At Physician Empowerment, we're focused on transforming the lives of Canadian physicians through education and finance, practice transformation, wellness, and leadership. After you've listened to today's episode, I encourage you to visit us at phys-empowerment.ca, that's PHYS, empowerment.ca, to learn more about the many resources we have to help you make that change in your own life, practice, and personal finances. Now on to today's episode.
Okay, welcome everyone. So we're really excited to have this very unique episode. This is part of a series called a Medical Entrepreneurship series. And as the name indicates, this is about doctors, medical professionals, or incorporated professionals leaving the trade where they went to, in this case, medical school or any professional school. Then they exit beyond the confines of their profession and they decide to go and conquer other space, and that's in the entrepreneurial world. So we love to interview people who have done that journey, and we're very, very excited to have Dr. Kola Kolawole from Ontario. He's a psychiatrist. So we're going to dive into that. So thank you, Kola, taking this invite from us. And we met quite a few years ago, right?
Yes, a few years ago now. Actually, I think maybe before the pandemic, because the pandemic is the new reference point.
Yeah, like exactly. Paused, right? And then we unpressed the pause. Now we resumed. That's right. So tell us, professional. I mean, maybe ethnically, like where are you from? Like, what's your ethnic origin? Maybe share with our audience.
Yeah, no, thanks, Wayne. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast series. Thanks for the opportunity. So I often, love to describe myself as a cocktail of climates, cultures, careers, and that's mainly because I'm originally West African. So I'm originally
Okay.
from Nigeria.
Okay.
Grew up in Nigeria. Went to medical school in Nigeria.
Okay.
And after medical school, I then went to the United Kingdom. So I went to the
Oh,
UK. I did my general residency training in the UK, became a general psychiatrist in the UK,
okay.
lived in the UK for many years. Obviously, I have Nigerian citizenship as the background. Then I have the British citizenship because I lived in the UK long enough to be able to acquire that. And, picked up a little bit of the Queen's accent or the British accent.
Yeah,
And then
I have that part, a little bit of that heritage too, but
I know, and then I moved to Canada. My wife and I moved to Canada about 14 years ago, over 14 years ago now.
right.
And when we moved to Canada, she wanted to subspecialize. So I thought, wouldn't be a bad idea to, get a fellowship in there too. So I did a fellowship in forensic mental health, which is forensic psychiatry.
Wow.
So I'm a general psychiatrist and I'm also a forensic psychiatrist.
Right.
I think 80 to 90% of my practice now is actually forensic mental health, which is
Wow.
mental health and law. So to answer your question, I'm originally West African, but I'm also British by transition, and I'm also Canadian by residence because I also have a Canadian passport. So I have three citizenship and I have three passports, like the international man of mystery.
Wow. Okay. Wonderful. So your wife is also a physician. So tell us more about her background.
Yeah, so my wife is also a physician. She's a diagnostic radiologist.
Hmm.
And we actually met in medical school. So we old med school sweethearts. Going way back 35 years ago now. Met 35 years ago. Been married for 24, going on 25 years. And
Wow.
it's that story that we always reflect on how our journey started, and started as friends, obviously, and then
Yeah.
it progressed from that. So yeah, she's also a physician. We share many different interests and passions together. It's always great when you have a wife who's a physician because she understands many things that you do and why you have to do them, and vice versa.
Well, but each is pulling their own strength and then going in 100 miles per hour. So medical marriages are not for the faint of heart. No, we're not going to dive into that today. Maybe we'll take a rain check on that, right? Because that is also interesting dynamics. Okay, so wonderful. So I would like to now talk about, okay, we know about a bit of your educational background, and your professional journey. So what precipitated, like with this all these moves, what precipitated all these moves from Africa to UK to Canada? Like what initiated all that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. And I think it's a number of factors. I think the first would be the desire to get that international exposure and see, how things are done elsewhere from a medical point of view, get, international training. Medicine is a beautiful specialty because it's portable, and the training obviously can be used anywhere in the world. So I think that was definitely a drive for me. The second factor for me was that my wife, before we got married, had actually moved from Nigeria to the UK. And of course, by then I knew this was somebody I definitely wanted to get married to. So after we got married, the UK was, she was living in the UK already. So the UK was the next stop. Otherwise, I may have gone elsewhere. I probably may have gone to the US because I actually have two brothers who immigrated to the US, and they've been there for years now. So yeah, so that was what prompted the move. And then, of course, after completing our general residency in the UK, we then decided to come to Canada. I mean, the options were Canada, Australia, New Zealand, just, thinking about where to do a fellowship outside the UK.
Right.
And Canada was an attractive option, first because I had, a cousin who had moved here. And then Canada has a reciprocal relationship with the UK, being one of the Commonwealth nations. So it was easy to transition, moving to Canada, not having, apart from doing the fellowship, which I really didn't have to do. I mean, I could still have practiced here. And then, of course, I wrote the Canadian board exams. My wife wrote the Canadian board exams too, which is the FRCPC exams. And we hit the ground running.
Well, I'm glad that you chose Canada. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have met. And so so then you've been in Canada, how long have you been living?
So over 14 years now.
Over 14 years, okay. Wow, so it's been a long time. So of course, medicine has transitioned a lot in your province, in my province, everywhere, right? So how do you feel? Do you feel squeezed? Do you feel strained? How's the professional journey inside medicine? And then I'm going to ask you outside of medicine.
So yes, the demands of medical practice are always intense. The weight and the burden of having to look after people day in, day out, especially as a psychiatrist. I know every other specialty has its own demands, but mental health, the incidence of mental health problems has risen significantly over the years, pre-pandemic and even post-pandemic. So there are those challenges that are there with the waiting lists, having to see patients with chronic problems. However, I must say, for me, I enjoy what I do, and I think that makes a difference. I really do enjoy what I do, and I think my joy for what I do comes from the fact that I see the results. I think working in forensic mental health, we work with a population of people that I describe them as, people who have a triple stigma, who have the stigma of mental disorder, stigma of criminal offending, and stigma of being high risk. And so as a forensic psychiatrist, when you come alongside this group of people and you work with them, provide rehabilitation, risk assessment, and safe community reintegration, and you see people's lives literally turned around and the trajectory of their lives changing, you get a lot of fulfillment from that. So even though you're dealing with a high-risk population and you're dealing with certain challenges, the chronicity and the intractable nature of certain mental disorders, I do get a lot of fulfillment from doing that. Even today, one of the patients that I've been looking after now for about 6 years, I look back and, there's joy, and not just me. Obviously, I work in a team, being, a clinical lead in a team, but there's joy from doing that. So that really helps to mitigate the pressure that you get from medical practice and the demands that it places on us in this day and age.
Right. So, okay, so double medical income family, right? Well to do, there's a lot of glory, there's leadership, there's a lot of professional actualization. So why think outside of medicine? Some patients says, isn't the money enough?
That is another good question. And I think there are a number of considerations if I really just want to approach that in a really authentic way. I think we didn't start off as physicians, and I certainly, took many years to get to the point where one is adding value and being remunerated well for it. But my entrepreneurship journey actually started way back in Nigeria. I got my inspiration from my mom. I always say she's the
From mom?
quintessential, yeah, my mom. I say she's the
Oh.
quintessential entrepreneur.
Oh,
She was a school teacher for many
wow.
years. I think she was a school teacher for maybe about 20, 25 years.
Okay.
And then she retired at the age of 45.
Wow.
So I can never forget, she had her 45th birthday and retirement ceremony in 1984. So she was
Wow.
45 in 1984. She's 86 now.
Ooh.
And she's done very well. So you can imagine she retired as a school teacher because she was already generating so much income in a lot of the business selling products and services that she was doing by the side. When her
Yes.
side hustle became so much that
Yeah.
she wasn't touching her teacher's income, and then she didn't have enough time to even dedicate to it. She decided to retire, and then she went full on into sales. So she basically was she sold a lot of commodities of value, let's put it that
Right.
way. And I really got inspired from her. I followed her around a lot. I knew a lot of her business transactions. She had a warehouse. I was actively involved in that. So I really got my inspiration from that, so much so that by the time I got to university, I was always thinking about passive income, active and passive income sources. So even though I was a student in the
That's
university,
amazing.
I set up a small transportation business where,
Wow.
I was, getting income. Some people were running some of the public transport systems that I put in place, and I was getting remuneration. I was getting income from that while I was in medical school.
Wow.
So I really always had my eyes on the need for passive income to complement active income, and I enjoyed it. So fast forward to when we got the UK, and I know I'll talk about that now, but that's definitely where it all started. And so even when we finished residency, we started working as attendings, we started earning a good income. I knew the difference between active income and passive income. And passive income ultimately is what leads people to financial independence and financial freedom. Active income is good because it generates the income that you need to invest. Yeah. So that's that's just the summary of where it all came from.
So I guess the take-home lesson is don't underestimate the imprinting that somebody can do, right? Your mom retired, right? And then so that did the imprinting in you, right? And so whatever we do, we could inspire other people too, right? And of course, they take a different course, but it basically inspire them, and they are like unleashed, right?
Absolutely.
Which is absolutely great. So this is getting really juicy. I love this, right? So while you were in UK, was there still businesses in Africa, or did you fold that chapter?
So the chapter that I had in Africa folded up when I moved to the UK.
Right.
Of course, my mom and the family still had the business there. And part of that business in Nigeria also included real estate investing. So at least I had some exposure to that.
Right.
So, but when I got to the UK, the first few years was kind of settling in, writing the licensing exams and applying for residency, getting into residency. This is well over 20 something years now. But I always knew I always knew that I have to think about other sources of income. And I would say, although I already had that exposure to real estate investing, it then so happened that the very first property that we bought in the UK happened to be a property that ticked 3 key boxes. I wouldn't say we knew it at the time. In fact, I always say we're lucky or fortunate at the time to have bought a property at the right time, in the right location, and at the right price point. Because that then opened the door for real estate investing in the West, because real estate investing back home in Africa is slightly different in many ways. I mean, it still has the passive appreciation potential, the active appreciation potential, the cash flow. But the one thing that we didn't have that much of in Nigeria was we didn't have the power of leverage.
Oh, okay.
So for me, even though I had been exposed to real estate investing and I already had that entrepreneur's mindset, when I
Mm.
got to the UK and I realized that you could come alongside, I described the banks as my business partners. You could
Right.
come alongside a bank, you could put a certain amount of money, 10, 20,
Sure.
25% down, and then the
Mhm.
bank could put more,
Yeah.
in the deal, creating a partnership, and you gain 4 or 5 or 6 ways, and the bank is gaining only one way. I was like, this is incredibly powerful, you
Yes,
know.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and that was what opened the door to real estate investing because we bought that property. We still own that property well over 20 something years now.
Wow.
And we actually even call that property the goose that keeps laying the golden egg because
Good for you.
we've refinanced it several times. And anytime we refinance it, it always gives birth to another property. So
Yeah.
it was the beginning of our real estate investing, back in the days.
Sure. Then, okay, next chapter, Canada. So how did your entrepreneurship continue in Canada?
Yes. So following on from that, so the real estate investing then became, I would say, something that we really, really realized that was going to be something that could create that passive income generation. And of course, real estate investing has many other facets. Apart from the product itself, there's a lot of service. There's a service industry around the real estate market and the
Mhm.
value that it adds. So before we left the UK, we actually had a number of holdings. So we acquired a number of real estate assets, which we still own in the UK,
Mhm.
generating income passively from those holdings. So when we made that transition to Canada, the big question was, what can we do in addition to many other things, many options that are out there? What can we do that would allow us to continue to practice medicine, which we enjoy doing, add value to people's life in the medical practice, and of course, get remunerated for it. So it creates a source of income. But what can we do that would also generate income, passive income on the other side? So, and after looking at various options, you have active businesses, that we took a look at. There are obviously, other traditional forms of investment in the public markets and things like that. But real estate still really stood out, and it stood out for many different reasons. And so when we came to Canada, the first few years, the first year doing the fellowship, second year settling in, by the time we got to the third year, we then realized that, okay, it's time to get back in the game. And at that point, it felt, like the appropriate time to really get as much knowledge and as much education as possible, even though we already had like background education and exposure and experience in real estate investing. But we then took a number of courses. We joined a number of real estate investing groups and clubs, and then really now started thinking about what asset classes in real estate should we focus on investing in based on the experience that we had. And that's what led us to the world of multifamily or multifamily, as the Americans call it, multifamily or multifamily investing, which is what we have focused on now for some years.
Right. Yeah. So you've done, that's your focus now, and you've gained a lot of success, and then you're in the educational space as well, right? In that sphere. Can you share a little bit what that experience is like?
Yes. So education for us, as would all agree, physicians, education is really the bedrock for decision making. Education is the bedrock for being able to make a difference and add value to the lives of people because, education really feeds your talent base, helps you to develop certain skills or to fine tune certain skills that you may have. And of course, we realized that the more education we got and the more experience we had and the more expertise we developed, especially as physicians in the world of real estate investing, it was important to give back. It was important to be able to share that knowledge with people as much as possible. And I have a passion for education, even in medicine. So it was easy to kind of translate that to real estate investing. And of course, having invested in real estate for over 20 years, I realized that I had seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, from the 2006, 2007 recession and some mistakes that we made and things like that, because that's also a part of education. So it's, so that experience I brought to the table and started educating physicians, fellow physicians. So that's a big part of what I do, providing information and education to fellow physicians, and not just fellow physicians, fellow healthcare professionals, and the general public at large about the benefits of investing in real estate as one of the asset classes. So, I have this series where I talk about 9 different asset classes that people should consider as diversification. And real estate for me is one of the foundational ones. So the way I split the 9 asset classes, being someone who's interested in real estate, I divided the asset classes into 3 groups. There's a group that is the foundational asset class, and I'll just mention them quickly. So the foundational asset class is 3 groups, in my opinion. This is strictly something I came up with, and that is the human asset class, which is your spirit, mind, and body. Look after your spirit, mind, and body. That's the human real estate. Look after that very well. Then the second asset class is the insurance asset class, which protects your assets. And then the third asset class is the geographical real estate asset class, which is investing in water, land, and buildings. So, so for me, that's foundational. Yes. Then the next group is what I call the walls and the contents. And the walls and the contents, it's looking for or developing an active and passive business, investing in the public markets, and investing in commodities of value. So active, passive businesses, public markets, and commodities of value. And then the what I call the ceiling and the roof in my asset class description is, again, that has 3 groups. And the first of the 3 groups there is developing intellectual property. So classical example would be the physician empowerment, platform that you and your partners have developed is a powerful intellectual property tool. Books, courses, apps, the whole works. Content creation. That's a massive asset class because it adds value and generates income. And then the second in that group, that ceiling and roofing group of asset classes that I encourage people to invest in is what I call the triple S, the systems, structure, and strategy. Extremely important. And they all work simultaneously, but for you to really build wealth, you need to have some systems, some structures, and some strategy in place. From simple things like estate planning. You and I can talk forever on the importance of that. Yes. And then, of course, the last asset class group that I, developed is the importance of creating multiple streams of income. That's just, I call them the taps. Right. So that's the framework that I use. But as you can see, the foundation of that framework, in my opinion, is having some real estate, some geographical real estate investments. Some, people would argue that it's largely illiquid. But it does, if set up properly, can be a really good cash flow generating machine.
Right on. So I got 2 questions for you. First question is about lessons learned. Second is some objections people have in their head already by listening to you. Okay, so first of all, so lessons learned. So in your many years practicing medicine and chasing your entrepreneurial enterprises, what are lessons learned, some in the positive side, the good side, and the bad side, the good, the bad, and the ugly? Can you share one of each?
Yes. So I would start with the good. Always nice to start. Nice to start with the good.
Yeah.
And this may come across as, because people would have heard this before, but I think most people would agree that passive income, being able to generate passive income, is something that most of us aspire to have. So active income is fantastic, and nothing replaces active income because there are many active income businesses. But I think one of the good aspects of entrepreneurship, especially if you're thinking about real estate investing as one of the asset classes that you would invest in, not the only one, is to look at the benefits of passive income, which is income that is generated when you're fast asleep, when you're physically absent. So that's definitely one of the good aspects of investing or developing an entrepreneur's mindset. I think the other benefit that I have got over time is just knowing that investing in real estate is not, for me personally, my wife and I, has not just been about making money for us. It's not about making money yes, making money, building generational wealth is important, but knowing fully well that we're adding value to people's lives. We started as people who rented, so we started as tenants, and to know that in the provision of housing, you are also adding value and making a difference to people's lives. So in fact, when it comes to real estate investing, I came up with 10 benefits or 10 profit centers from real estate investing. And the very first benefit of real estate investing, especially the multifamily real estate investing, is the ability to be able to provide shelter to what I call our tenant clients. So for me, that also gives me a sense of fulfillment, knowing fully well that I'm contributing and making a difference to people's lives. So those are some of the benefits.
How about
Yeah.
lesson? Bad, good, bad, ugly. Bad. We gotta move fast.
Yes. So the lessons learned on the bad side is for real estate investing. I'll focus on real estate investing, and I'll say this clearly so people realize that it's certainly a space where you have to be very careful. There are three things I talk about in real estate that you have to be careful about. Three, and I'll say them quickly. The very first is that you need to be careful about the use of leverage. As much as leverage can be powerful, it can also be dangerous when you're over leveraged. Yeah. So it's extremely important for people not to get over leveraged. So it's the balance between liquidity, liability, and leverage. Mm-hmm. Liquidity is king. So to always ensure that even when you're investing in real estate, you have enough liquidity, you manage your leverage, and you also manage your liability, because a lot of people have been taken out in the real estate market or real estate investing market because they have been over leveraged and they have so much liability that they don't have enough liquidity to really manage that, because a lot of income property real estate can be illiquid. The other area that I would say, again, speaking about real estate, and I'll say this quickly, especially for physicians, is to be very careful about the area of private lending, because real estate as a broad group has three main buckets or three main divisions. So you have private lending, then you have land development, and you have income property. So income property is when you actually buy the hard asset. Land development is when you buy the land and you aim to develop the land, and private lending. So private lending, I always tell people now, please stay away from unsecured private lending if you're already in that space. I know some people still do it, but it's quite dangerous. Secure private lending, preferably in the first position, just the way the banks do it, because that is an area that a lot of people have got caught out, and we actually even got affected by that. So that was definitely one lesson learned. Another lesson learned from this was going back to the 2007, 2008 recession, was the complications and challenges that you could have with pre-construction condo purchase. So we had got our fingers burnt, this is going back almost 20 years again, 2007, 2008 recession. So some people are going through it now, and a lot of people who I know have advised them, pre-construction condos are not really an investment. You can buy them for yourself and your kids, or if you're single and you're starting off, but it's not, in my opinion, and I know people who may disagree, it's not really a way to invest in real estate if you're starting off. So those are some of and then of course, land development. If you're going to venture into land development, you need to have a lot of experience, or you need to have a lot of mentorship to do it, because it can be a bit of a slippery slope. It's not for the faint-hearted, as you Wing would clearly testify to.
So how about for our non-real estate friends, just thinking about entrepreneurship? So what was maybe some bad experience you had that you learned from? You rather people not repeat that mistake, whether they're in real estate or outside of real estate?
Yes. So some of the, I would say that one of the experience that I learned mainly as an investor was not doing enough due diligence. There have been a number of projects that I've been involved in where I didn't do enough due diligence, and this is in the area of private lending, where you really need to do as much due diligence, get as much legal analysis, find out about the deal or the project that you're actually investing in, That really cannot be overemphasized. So yeah, that would definitely be one area. You can tell that, I'm quite passionate about that because I know that, a lot of people have been impacted by that.
Yeah, well, I guess it applies to any startups, any business, any entrepreneurial ventures, right? If you don't do the due diligence, well, you may be burnt, right? Okay, so final question is objection. They say, okay, Dr. Kola, okay, so you know so much, but I haven't got time. I'm so busy. I work 80 hours, I'm on call 120. Where do I find time? I got no head space, no time. Where do I find time to do this? What would be your answer to those colleagues?
Yes. So my answer to those colleagues would be to be true to yourself. So, if time, obviously, if you have a lot of time constraints, then you may, and this is understanding your yourself, what we call your investor profile. Are you going to be somebody who wants to invest more passively, who wants to go down that entrepreneurship path in a more passive way or more active way? Now, for most people who don't have time, especially busy physicians, the route is usually the route of investing more passively. And finding, again, like I said, in one of these asset classes or vehicles to determine which of these asset classes can you invest in safely, can you invest in with as much knowledge, because you need to have as much knowledge about what you're doing, and also determine whether or not this is something that you want to do solo or whether you're going to do it in partnerships, because sometimes you do it in partnerships with people who have more of an active role, and then of course you can be more passive, and that helps to mitigate the issues of no time, because if you're active and you're solo, then obviously you need to put in a bit more time. But the bottom line is you need to understand or determine what your investor profile is going to be. If you don't have time, then you may want to invest more passively. And there are lots of opportunities to invest in real estate passively. There are lots of opportunities to invest in businesses passively. There are lots of opportunities to invest in the public markets passively. So passive investing definitely is the way to go if you don't have time. But if you have some time, then you could also venture and do some active investing, or even business startups, which will require more of your time and your commitment.
Well, people dovetail to that question is, well, where do I get the knowledge? Where do I start?
Yes. So depending on what areas of interest, again, in the midst of all these asset classes, I would talk about real estate because that's an area that I have focused on for many years. And I would say there are multiple sources of getting knowledge. I think the very first basic knowledge that one should get in the real estate investing space, and I'll use I'll just use an example. The Physicians Empowerment platform is a good place to start, being a member of a group of people where you can get information and education about various asset classes. I know that the Physician Empowerment Group definitely provides a lot of information about real estate investing and education. There are courses that you can attend, real estate investing books, either at a basic level and an intermediate level. Those would be very good sources of knowledge, but it's also important to seek out mentorship. I think, mentorship from people who have invested in that space or who are investing in that space is also very important.
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, this is a ton of really good stuff. Thank you, Kola, for that. And yes, so that's why Kevin and I we do what we do, and we network with people like Kola, who's so passionate about everything he does. You can just see that in his eyes, right? There's fire in the belly, right? And yeah, so a little bit of heads up for everyone that we have masterclass series that you guys can sign up for, and then we this academic year we're doing half of it. We alternate 1 month we do financial literacy and education, the other half we do real estate, right? So a lot of these things we're going to cover. So thank you again, Kola. So one last advice you would give to people who thought, either physicians, non-physicians, incorporated professionals, they thought about should they venture out of their own profession and do something entrepreneurial. What would be one last piece of advice, like one sentence advice you would give them?
One advice I would give comes from the great book, which is do not despise the days of little beginnings. So start small in whatever you feel that you're interested or you're passionate about, start small, acquire knowledge, find a mentor in that area, start small, and then build upon the little steps, and you will get there. You will get there.
Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you, Kola. This has been a great show. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you so much, Wing.
Thank you so much for listening to the Physician Empowerment Podcast. If you're ready to take those next steps in transforming your practice, finances, or personal well-being, then come and join us at phys-empowerment.ca, PHYS empowerment.ca, to learn more about how we can help. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would share our podcast with a colleague or friend, and head over to Apple Podcasts to give us a 5-star rating and review. If you've got feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episode topics, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to join us and be interviewed and share some of your story, we'd absolutely love that as well. Please send me an email at kmilo@phys-empowerment.ca. Thank you again for listening. Bye.